You were made for more than just to punch in, punch out. You were meant for way more than that. You deserve more than that. My admonition is be irreplaceable. Be so irreplaceable that the thought of them losing you makes it so that they can pay you as much as they possibly can still pay. If you're living to paycheck, you're stuck for the rest of your life. You gotta make a change. No, you're not burnt out. You might be uninspired. You might be underappreciated, but you got more left in the tank. What if I said you only had to do it for 5 years and never again?
If you think wealth is about luxury cars, designer jewelry, or exotic vacations, you're in the wrong place. We're not concerned about your net worth, your 401k, or how much debt you have. Our approach is much different because real wealth isn't only about money. It's about freedom. Freedom to work because you want to, not because you have to. Freedom to pursue your purpose, live on passive income, and build a legacy. That freedom starts now. Welcome to the Real Wealth Formula with Brad Hovis, where each episode breaks down the principles, mindset, and practical steps to help you experience financial freedom today. Real talk, real numbers, real freedom. This is the Real Wealth Formula.
What's up, moguls? Welcome to the Real Wealth Formula. The question for today is how to enlarge your active income. And if you're working a 9-to-5 job, I've got maybe good news for you, maybe bad news for you. The best way to enlarge your active income, make more money, increase your income is to just be a better employee. Okay, I know that sounds odd, but some of us hate our jobs. We come into the job, we do the bare minimum. In fact, this terrible phrase gets thrown around, quiet quitting, right? Doing literally the least amount in order to not get fired. Like, that is terrible. Humans were not meant to quiet quit. They were not meant to just barely do the minimum to just not get fired. And ultimately, it's not helping you. Like, it might seem like it helps you from a psychological perspective, but it really doesn't. You were made for more than that. You were made for more than just to punch in, punch out, avoid your boss, do the minimum that they require, and go home and watch TV. You were meant for way more than that. You deserve more than that. And so, my admonition to enlarge that active income is to be a better employee. Be the best employee you can possibly be. Find additional ways to earn money for the company. Find more profitable ways that you become a absolute, team member that they just can't let go of. That they're willing to give you raise after raise after raise, promotion after promotion. If you're in a small business, okay, that's fine. There are ways. I promise you. I'm an employer. Okay, I employ a lot of people. At the end of the day, let's not get this thing twisted. In order to have an employee, they have to be doing something that, because of them, I make more money. That's just the reality of it. If I pay someone $100,000 a year, but they are only worth or produce $50,000 a year, then I'm losing $50,000 a year. That is not going to happen. That employment situation is not going to happen anymore, right? If I'm breaking even, right? Say that I pay them $100,000 and because of their work I make $100,000. That's also not going to work. Why? Well, because I'm not making any money. The purpose of business, the purpose of working, the purpose of doing jobs is to produce and make money. And if we're just breaking even, I've got other stuff I would much rather do than just try to break even on a job in order to have somebody else have a job, right? But if that person who's making $100,000 is making the company $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 a year, that person now becomes invaluable to me. When they come to me, which by the way, you ought to go to your bosses and and ask for a raise. And I'm going to tell you how to do that in just a minute. But that person becomes invaluable, right? If they're making all of this money, when it does come time to have that raise talk, I'm much more willing to listen and try to make them happy because they're now a viable team member. They're now producing. They now become an asset. They are an asset to me, right? Because assets make money, liabilities cost you money. Most people who are doing the whole if you're doing the quiet quitting, you are no longer an asset to the company. You are literally a liability. It's costing the company more money to keep you in there than to let you go. They just don't know it yet. And that's not a lot of integrity in that scenario. But become a better boss, or a better employee. Become invaluable. Develop more skills that will help the business. Go get certifications. Go get licenses. Go do something. If you're going to do something, you ought to do it well. You ought to do it right. You ought to put your energy behind it, right? And make it so that you're using your unique talents that nobody else has, your unique personality that nobody else has, to go and do something really amazing, to grow the business, to get more money for the company, and to then go and say, hey, I'm an invaluable part of what we're doing here. Because then when it comes time to ask for a raise, because the whole question that's being asked is, how do I enlarge my active income? How do I make more money, Brad? Well, that's one way. That's the easiest way. It is the easiest way. It may not happen right now if you've been a quiet quitter for a long time. If you've been a quiet quitter that's just doing the bare minimum, you should not expect a raise. You actually should expect a demotion and a pay decrease. That's what you should expect. Don't do that. Don't be that guy. But if you have been a good team member that's producing more for the company, that a raise is justified, you might be literally one conversation after having listened to this episode of increasing your active income just by following what I'm about to say to you. Go into that meeting and lay out, hey, boss, because of this action that I did, we were able to get this additional revenue. Because of this step that I take, we made more money this way. And list them all out. List all the reasons and all the things that you have been able to do, because you've got to justify it to a boss, right? You've got to justify saying, hey, this person deserves more in order to keep them around, number one. Because if you just go and say, hey, I want more money. Yeah, we all want more money. What are you doing to earn more money? That's the question you got to ask yourself. And if the answer is no, I'm not really doing much to earn more money. I've just been here a long time. So is the couch. So is the furniture. Like, who cares that you've been there for a long time? You need to be there for a long time and producing more revenue. Let's not get this thing twisted. The purpose of business is to make money. And if you're not a team member contributing to making a bunch of money, you're replaceable. Many of you have found that out, right? You found out that how replaceable you are, that by the end of the day, you had a job ad out and they filled your position within days. So my admonition is be irreplaceable. Be so irreplaceable that the thought of them losing you makes it so that they can pay you as much as they possibly can still pay. Because remember, just because you might be in sales, right, and you're responsible for $400,000 worth of sales or whatever it is, that doesn't mean that that's $400,000 worth of profit. That's just the top line. You still got to fulfill the thing. You still got to produce the thing. If it's a product, you still got to make the thing. You still have overhead. And this is what bosses are concerned about. They're not just concerned about your salary. You're concerned about your salary. That's great. But they're not just concerned about your salary. They're concerned about the whole profitability of the entire company, right? And if you know what it costs to produce your product or service, if it's 30% of whatever you're able to sell, then now you can kind of do the math. And do the math respectfully, but coming and saying, hey, I've increased profitability here. I've increased revenue here. I've decreased expenses here. There's only two ways to make money in a business. To make more money. in a business, something that our government has not learned, which is increase your revenue or decrease your expenses. Those are the only two ways to do it. So either you come in saying, hey, I was able to decrease our expenses by $100,000. Do you think I can get a raise for that? Maybe. Or I've been able to, the best way is to increase the revenue. I'm bringing more money in here. Now, if you're an admin situation or a manager situation or whatever, you're going to have to get creative to figure out how you can add value to the market, to the marketplace and to your business. But once you do figure that out, go and ask for that raise. Go and ask to make some more money. And maybe one tip, instead of just asking for a raise in your salary, maybe ask for a percentage of something that you're increasing or selling. Saying, hey, would you mind adding a commission component to this for me? Would you mind saying, if I sell something past this, come up with a comp plan that works for the business, works for you, so that it can be justified, right? If you're able to produce more income for the company, more revenue for the company, more profit for the company, and you become an irreplaceable person, you are going to make more money. You're going to increase your active income. But the second way might be, and unfortunately, I read an article the other day. I don't know if we can pull that up or I put that in a link in the show notes, but it talked about how loyalty and longevity may not be the best strategy for you to make more money. You may need to switch companies, which is number two, switch jobs. If you're doing this and you're doing well and you're really good at it and all this kind of stuff, but your company's just not recognizing it, you've had the conversation about raises, you've had the conversations about different comp plans, and it's just not working, you may need to go find another job and go work for somebody else who will pay you more than what you're currently making. Now, I'm not a big proponent of that, only because the grass isn't always greener on the other side, and a lot of people get burnt doing that way, right? Or they think the grass is greener on the other side. But if you can really do a good job interviewing, talking to headhunters, understanding the company, understanding the culture, even asking really poignant questions that most potential employees don't ask, like, hey, what's our revenue right now? What's our expenses? What's our profitability right now? Like, if you're concerned with the top line, those managers, you may see that a bad manager will get a little, not embarrassed, but think that it's a little off-putting. But a good manager won't. A good manager is not gonna be like, "How dare you ask that question?" A good manager is gonna say, "Well, we're at X, we want to be at Y. What can you do to help us get there?" And then answer that question. Well, here's how I can help you. I can bring in these clients. I can do this type of work. I can reduce our expenses here. I can do a bunch of different kind of things. So a way to enlarge your active income, you might need to quit. And many of you are listening to this podcast as you're driving into the work that you need to be having these conversations in the next couple of days. You need to be making decisions in the next couple of days. Hey guys, I'm here for you. We got a plan. That's the real wealth formula. And it includes making more money. You got to make more money. Why? Why do you have to make more money? Because you need to use the additional capital to go acquire cash flowing assets. If you're living paycheck to paycheck, you're never going to get out of the rat race. Let me repeat that. If you're living to paycheck, you're stuck for the rest of your life. You got to make a change. You got to reduce those monthly expenses so that it's not paycheck to paycheck. You need to enlarge your active income so that you're making some more money, that you've got disposable money. And instead of blowing it on yachts or on boats and trips and all this other stuff, use that additional money to go acquire cash flowing assets that will produce you passive income. I get fired up a little bit. Anyway, but you may want to switch jobs. Okay, you may want to switch jobs to somebody that will pay you more. That's a viable option. I know it's risky. I know it's difficult. But you know what else is risky? Staying in the same spot that you're in right now. That's risky. Because they can... Let's not kid ourselves. You can be replaced by the end of the week. You may have an affinity for your boss. You may love your job. You may be good at what you're doing. But if it's not helping you with your personal finance plan, you may want to find another job. Now, don't quit. Listen, don't quit your job until you get the other one lined up. This word that I hear all the time, I get burnt out. I'm burnt out. I'm so burnt out. No, you're not burnt out. Maybe the kids in China who are working 100 hours a week in a sewing factory for these big corporations, they might get burnt out. You're not burnt out. You might be uninspired. You might be underappreciated, but you're not burnt out. You got more left in the tank. So don't go with that burnout nonsense. Very few people actually burn out. If your pituitary gland blows, yes, you burnt yourself out. Other than that, you're just, again, uninspired. So let's get re-inspired. And hopefully the Real Wealth formula will inspire you to look at your job differently. Your job has a job, and that's to help you with the formula, to help you become wealthy. Like, it's not just an end, the means to an end. I just do this. I punch in, I punch out. No, it's got a purpose to make you wealthy. You got to reshift your mentality around what the job is supposed to be doing. The job is supposed to be giving you additional money so you can go acquire passive income. Imagine if that's only 5 years from now. You hate your job. You're burnt out with your job. You hate your boss. You do all this kind of stuff. What if I said you only had to do it for 5 years and never again? Think you can put up with 5 years? Because for me, I started this path towards financial freedom. I made the decision in 2008. I started getting educated. I didn't do my first deal, and I'll tell you about the story of my first deal until August of 2010. Okay, so August of 2010. It took me 2 years or so just to prepare to do one deal. Then from there, once I learned the real estate investing tools and tricks, I retired in June of 2013. So 3 years after that. What I'm saying is 3 to 5 years from deciding, hey, I'm going on this formula. That's what it took me. You're going to get the shortcuts, right? You're going to get the shortcuts listening and participating in these shows. You're going to be able to do it sooner, hopefully. That's if you put the effort. It's all effort driven. But that's a second option, switch jobs. The third option is a side hustle, right? You can do a bunch of different kind of side hustles. And many might frown their nose at these side hustles, but I want you to get the mentality of maybe your job, maybe you've maxed yourself out at the job. Maybe you don't have the ability to go get a raise. Maybe your scenario is such that it just is what it is, right? You need to start thinking about making additional income. And some of that additional income might be through freelance work, right? It might be through, I do this, but I do a different for my job, but I do a different iteration on my own, right? It may be as simple as like driving Uber, officiating youth sports, finding those different kind of things just to kind of get ahead. Now those are lower, pay per hour type things. You're going to make $40-50 per hour. But you stack them up, maybe it's enough to go get into a rental property over time. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So that service industry side hustles are legitimate. But you're saying, well, Brad, you want me to work 2 jobs? Yeah, that's what I did. Whatever it takes. Do you want to be wealthy or not? You're going to keep doing the same thing? That's the definition of insanity, right? That's an example of insanity. It's not the definition. The example of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting a different result. That's crazy. Don't do that. Figure something out. It might be a side hustle. Another side hustle, you could start a business. Now, this is something that is not for everybody. Starting a business requires a lot, and most new startups fail. but it is an option. You might be a manager. You might be entrepreneurial enough. You may be someone who sees something that can work in the marketplace and get paid a good income for and work out really well. My admonition is get educated. Learn how to do business. You may have just been an employee who comes in, and one of the things that I want to say is a lot of salespeople are not actually salespeople. This is tying in, trust me. They're not really salespeople. They're order takers, meaning you may be someone who sells auto parts or mattresses or something like that, and you think that you're a salesperson. Well, someone walks into a mattress store, the chances of them wanting a mattress pretty high. So really what you're just saying is, well, do you want the sleep number bed? Do you want the memory foam? Do you want a queen size? Do you want a king size? Like, that's order taking. And they call you a salesperson because you are technically doing sales and you get a commission because you do sales, but like, you're not really doing sales. Sales is someone has no idea that they want to buy the product that you're trying to sling them. And you convince them out of the clear blue sky to do that. That's sales. That's entrepreneurship. That's starting a business. Because when you start a business, you want to get those sales first before you start building out the stores and all that kind of stuff. There's a book called Ready, Fire, Aim. Before you start any business, read that book. That will tell you about, hey, sell what you want to do first before you start even producing the product or the service or whatever, because you don't know if the market actually likes what it is that you have to sell. And then, of course, the side hustle that I have an affinity for is real estate. See, real estate is something that I was able to do on nights, weekends, margins of my day. I was able to make it so that I made big money sometimes and residual money, all the time. I made it so that I went from not being able to afford a $50 dress to my passive income larger than my monthly expenses, retired in the house that I would like to live for the rest of my life, right? Like, that's kind of the trajectory. It took 5 years to get there. That's where you could get to. Like, following the real estate, that's what most of this podcast is talking to real estate investors, talking about real estate questions that you have. Because in my opinion, real estate is the easiest, most predictable way for people to escape the rat race. Something that they can do as a side hustle, margins of the day. It's a side hustle to end all side hustles. And so the story I want to tell you is about my very first real estate deal. So I was still managing at the time I was now a pastor of a church. We had planted this church. This is in August of 2010. And I had learned about a technique called wholesaling. Wholesaling is when you get a property under contract and then you sell the contract. That's the rudimentary way that we go into way more detail in our training. But I had signed up for a lead service. And this is where there are marketers out there who will do a lot of SEO, PPC. So SEO stands for search engine optimization. This is website stuff. PPC is pay per click. This means that they have targeted certain people that they think will sell their house at a discount. And I signed up for one of those, and I would get the leads. They would come in, and I'd smile and dial. I'd call, go through my script. And eventually I got together with a seller in Colorado Springs. Colorado Springs is about an hour south of Denver. And he had this house. He had this house that he had rented. He was wanting to sell it. I went down to the Springs. I met with him in person, which I don't recommend. There's easier ways to do it just over the phone. But I met him in person. And when I met him, I met him at the house. We went to the house. I didn't realize this, but there were people living in the house, tenants, people who were just paying him rent. So I go into the house, look all around, see what I think the construction of the rehab would be if these people moved out. And we went back to his place, his home, and negotiated. Well, this was a disabled veteran. He had his neck fused, so he couldn't move his neck at all. His objective was that once he sells this house in the Springs, that he was then going to pay off his house, that the money he gets from his disability was going to be enough that he would never have to work again, and he could just live the rest of his life in this amazing house in the Springs on a hill overlooking this valley that has a great view of, the Front Range. And so we negotiated that I would buy this house for $100,000. Now, let me be really clear. I did not have $100,000. Could I have gotten $100,000? Maybe, from hard money lenders. Hard money lenders are people who will lend money for rehab purposes very quickly, so you can get a loan fast rather than waiting on Wells Fargo and that whole arduous process, traditional lenders. But I did not have $100,000. Fact, I had like $600. I had $600 in my bank account. I had a 600 credit score, less than a 600 credit score, less than $600 in the bank. And we agreed to, he would sell the property to me for $100,000. He wanted earnest money, and he wanted earnest money in cash. So I literally drove to the bank, pulled out $100 from my bank account, now lowering it down to less than $500, and handed him the cash. We signed this contract, and now I was off doing what wholesalers do, trying to find a buyer, trying to find an investor who wants to buy this. I emailed my list. I talked to all of my friends, all the people who had been in the subsequent classes that I'd learned how to do real estate in. Hey, do you want this deal? Hey, do you want this deal? Hey, do you want this deal? And I'm trying to sell them and make a margin between $100,000 and say $110,000. In fact, I was advertising it for $110,000 in Colorado Springs. Nobody wanted it. I even got the biggest real estate investors in the Springs to go look at this house. People who run RIA clubs. They went in there so many times that the tenants who lived there, I put a lockbox on it and would tell the tenants, they were Spanish speaking. I could hardly translate. I learned enough to say something along the lines of, I've got someone looking at the house at this time tomorrow, just letting you know. It was a text message. So people kept going into the house, looking at it. It ticked the tenants off so bad that they left. They moved out within a few weeks. They said, we're not dealing with this anymore. Now, this disabled veteran who I had promised to buy the house for $100,000 is now out of income. So he calls me up and says, hey, they moved out. They got tired of you showing this property. You better make sure you buy this thing or I'm losing money. Like, I should be getting this rent. Week after week after week went on. And I could not sell this house. Finally, I was at a real estate investment club. There was a young guy who said that he was an investor. He was a fix and flipper. He said, hey, is that house still available? I said, it absolutely is. He goes, well, can we go down tomorrow? Yes. So we go down tomorrow and by, I say God's sovereignty, He also brought his hard money lender with him, which is an odd situation. Most hard money lenders send out their own inspectors or their own people if they send anybody at all. But he actually brought his hard money lender, the guy who was going to fund the deal for this other investor, this young guy, to do a fix and flip. So the objective was he was going to buy the house from me for $110,000, put in X amount of dollars, 30, 40 grand, and then sell it for more, right? Well, they go to the house, look all around. They make a determination. Yep, it needs X amount of rehab. The hard money lender says, I'm willing to lend you this amount. I wasn't privy to those conversations. And the young fix and flipper didn't have the money to do the difference between what the hard money lender was willing to lend versus what the house needed in order to try to sell it. So this young investor, I remember exactly where we were at, right on the front lawn, tells me, hey, I can't buy it. I would need to come up with like 30 grand and I just don't have it. So I'm dejected. I go, oh gosh, I'm going to have to tell this disabled veteran I can't buy this house. He's kicked, these tenants have walked out. He's now losing money. I've got my $100 in non-refundable earnest money. He's going to keep. I'm going to lose that $100. Like, I'm like devastated. Well, the hard money lender shakes my hand. The young investor shakes my hand. They go to their car, and that's when I hear, oh, crap. What the heck is going on? The hard money lender had locked his keys in his car. So I'm down in the Springs. I'm an hour away. This young investor, turns out he didn't know anything either. Both newbies are sitting there with this very experienced hard money lender. And we're waiting on the hard money lender's wife to bring keys to this car so that he can drive off and go home. Well, while we're there, we're just chopping it up and talking deals and talking about what's going on. And one of the things that the hard money lender says is, hey, this house would be great for Section 8. I didn't even know what Section 8 was. He goes, well, I said, what is Section 8? Section 8 is a government program that allows single mothers to live in houses that the government will pay for. So a vast majority of their rent payment comes from the government. It's a consistent thing. It's a residual thing. I don't do Section 8 anymore. Side note, I don't do Section 8 anymore for various reasons. But this guy does. He goes, yeah, this would be great for this. So I'm glad I asked the question. The young investor wanted to flip it. That was the bad strategy for that exact house. The hard money lender said this would be a great house to hold as a rental property and have a Section 8 tenant move in. I said, well, you wouldn't want this house, would you? He goes, whoa, this isn't my deal. This is his deal, the young investor's deal. Young investor, I'm out. I can't afford it. Hard money lender goes, well, what do you want for it? To me, I go, man, if I can make $1,000 on it, I'd take it. He goes, well, what are you in it for? I said, 100. He goes, so for 101, I can buy this house. I said, yes, I'll assign the contract. I'll sell the contract to you. He said, deal. Shook my hand, got the assignment done, sent it over to the title company. I went to the closing with him, which you really don't do as a wholesaler. I just thought that was what you're supposed to do. And I made $1,000 on my very first deal. That was my side hustle that made me recognize that I can make money nights, weekends, margins of my day. Yeah, I had to drive down to the Springs every once in a while. But that was a way that I was able to start increasing my active income. Now, that's a hard story. There's a lot of things going on there that are like, I did all the wrong things. I didn't market to the right people. I didn't have my buyers set up first. I didn't have my investors ready to go. I was making promises that I really couldn't do. Like, there's a lot of things, and we don't teach that in our training. We teach you how to do it the right way. But it's like, no, that though I screwed it up 6 ways from Sunday, that's what got me started. That's number one. Now I've done over 500 deals, $86 million worth of real estate. All started with number one. While I was still pastoring a church, while I'm doing this as a side hustle, while I'm doing this nights and weekends, that's an example of how you can enlarge your active income. Because in the subsequent deals I started doing years later was me acquiring passive income, which is step 3 of the real wealth formula. So hope you got something out of this episode, learning that you can do a bunch of different ways, but the objective is you got to make some money. And the best way to make some additional money is through active work. You got to get off the snide. You got to get off the couch. You got to be a better employee. You might need to switch jobs. You need to develop a side hustle. That's what I did. And there's as you continue to listen to this podcast, we're going to help you with those strategies. We're going to help you be able to enlarge your monthly expenses, which is step 2 in the real wealth formula. So hopefully you got a lot out of this. I'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks for tuning in to the Real Wealth Formula hosted by Brad Hovis. If this episode helped you see money and purpose a little differently, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. Share with someone who's ready to build real wealth and keep building the life, purpose, and freedom you were made for. Until next time, keep your goals clear and your wealth real.